The Iron Game Chalk Talk podcast is brought to you by the following sponsors: EliteForm.com and IgnitionAPG.com. And now, the Iron Game Chalk Talk podcast. Welcome to Iron Game Chalk Talk with your host, Ron McKeefery.
Every time our athletes walk into this weight room, they're going to be pushed to the max.
Let's go! Everything you got!
On this podcast, hear Coach McKeefery's straight talk about training, featuring the top strength and conditioning professionals from around the world. And now, here's your host, Ron McKeefery.
Game Chalk Talk. I'm your host, Ron McKeefery, and this is episode number 62. Iron Game Chalk Talk is a weekly podcast where I bring you experts in the field to talk shop. If you haven't already done so, please subscribe to us on iTunes or YouTube, or join our mailing list at ronmckeefery.com so you can stay up to date with the latest things we got going on and whatever the latest episode is. This week, real excited to have Brian Thompson with us. Brian is the head strength coach, program coordinator for Springfield College, and if you've gone to any clinics, you know the army of strength coaches that Springfield College puts out. We talk about that program, how it's been able to be, it's a small program, Division III program in the Northeast, but it's been putting out strength coaches for several years, and they got a great academic program that goes along with a great practical application of that academics. So we talk about his journey. We talk about that program, and then we, with a program that's focused on putting out strength coaches, we talk a little bit about where the field is headed and things that he thinks that we can do to help improve it. Before we get started, I want to make sure we recognize our sponsors, EliteForm.com and IgnitionAPG.com. EliteForm is a sports science company based in Nebraska, and they've got, if you've been to the conferences, you've seen this. Fantastic way of being able to do velocity-based training right there at the rack. They got a camera system, and it really integrates very seamlessly into your training program. And so, programs such as the Philadelphia Eagles and Texas A&M and several others are jumping on board. But they got the paperless system, the Power Tracker Lite, Strength Planner, and you can get a free 30-day trial of the Strength Planner by going to IGCT at EliteForm.com. Just send them an email. Let them know that you appreciate them for sponsoring the show, and just try out the program. Check it out, see what you think. But as strength coaches, we constantly need to be challenging ourselves and trying to stay up with the technology because it's created for a reason. So I'd encourage you to do that. Lastly, I want to make sure we talk about Strength Coach Basic Training. I've redone this program. I've moved it to a Facebook group, a private Facebook group, and it's really increased our interaction, and so I post jobs. We have a whole training system, but what the great thing about it is if you're a young strength coach, you're just getting into the field, it's a fantastic way to introduce different programs and interact with other coaches. So your network increases dramatically just by joining the group, and so we have 8 checkpoints, 8 lectures that you go through at your pace, and with that comes assignments and projects, and you post it to the group, and the group gives you feedback, your peers, and so it's a fantastic program. If you haven't checked it out, go to strengthcoachbasictraining.com and join there and get into the group, and I guarantee you, if you are a young strength coach, you will really enjoy the program. But want to get to Coach Thompson. I really enjoyed this. This is the first live episode that we've done. We did it as part of our intern training, and he's a great guy and a great ambassador for our profession. So take some notes, and we'll see you on the other side. Excited to have Brian Thompson, Dr. T, with us today. And, Dr. T is the head strength coach at Springfield College and a fantastic person. Guys contributed quite a bit to this field, and so we're excited to have you on campus. This is the first time I've done a live podcast like this. I got the rest of our staff with us, and this is something we like to do. We like to do anytime that you are traveling through Ypsilanti and you have an opportunity to stop through and spend time with our staff, we love to have coaches come in and talk shop, and so we just decided to put Dr. T on the site and have him spend some time with us. So appreciate you being here.
All right, thanks for having me.
You know, if you would, just for the people that don't know you as well, can you kind of go into your background? You know, what got you into strength and conditioning in the first place, and then how the road you traveled to get to where you're currently at.
Okay, I think like a lot of people my age have been in it for a while. Kind of got into it through powerlifting originally, and then in college football, and just kind of from there went on. I mean, started working back in the 80s with powerlifters. Then went into coaching after I got out of college. My original goal was to be a high school wrestling, football coach, and math teacher, and ended up actually suffering some injuries. Played football, Ball State University, and going into athletic training.
The enemy, by the way, the enemy. Feelings are coming for it.
So I ended up getting into athletic training as well. So I was kind of working with that. I worked at a high school in strength and conditioning and athletic training, and as a wrestling coach. Also coached football at the high school and then the junior high level. So really came at it from a coaching background. So I really feel like I was very lucky to develop those coaching skills and then able to take those into the weight room, coaching the sport teams. From there, I actually thought I wanted to be a physical therapist. So I went to the University of Illinois to do a one-year degree and get into PT school. I ended up getting into PT school, but then I was offered a position at Illinois, and it was a little unique in that it was mainly with wheelchair sports. And a lot of people don't know Illinois, this, especially back in the 90s, was the kind of the Olympic training center for wheelchair sports. They had scholarship for wheelchair athletes. So I was kind of thrown into this just from just by chance, and I went for it. That's what I always tell my students, don't say no to anything. And I look back at what I learned there, and especially with the shoulder and rehab and that type of thing, and then working with upper body exercise physiology, and that's kind of became my niche for a while, going around speaking on that, just training upper body athletes, and just the periodization, the programming. And you think about with spinal cord injury, wheelchair athletes, there's so many different levels of injury. I was probably writing close to 30 programs every 3 or 4 weeks, just to periodize everything and mix everything up. So really, hammered down that programming aspect of it. While I was there, I started taking classes and ended up about 7 years later with my PhD.
That's what was taking me.
And from there, I was lucky enough to land at Springfield College, originally in athletic training, and then after a few years of that, I ended up in strength and conditioning as the head strength coach and associate director of the grad program there. And the director at the time, Margaret Jones, had started an excellent program. And she left about 6 years ago, and I took over. They combined the two jobs and gave everything to me. So instead of hiring a new person, just like
I'm sure more money came
put everything. Oh yeah, of course. Yeah. But so now I run the grad program. So I go over all the applications for that. I teach all the classes. I teach 6 classes a year, and they all have strength and conditioning somewhere in the title. So that's pretty cool. I get to do that. So I teach majority of the content classes, and then supervise the weight room, hire the GAs. I work with teams myself, do all the scheduling and all the administration for the facility.
And travel the world, and coming around and meeting with them.
Yeah, I'm very fortunate. I get to go around, visit all the interns, and, meet great coaches and great staffs, and really steal from everybody I see.
That's awesome. That's awesome. So, you mentioned the program at Springfield College, and not very many people know, but it's one of the few that's got especially that's recognized as an applied strength and conditioning program by the NSCA. But it's really, for all intents and purposes, about the only program in the country that's got a master's degree in strength and conditioning. Talk a little bit about the program itself. What it takes to get into the program. What kind of makes it special, because you can't go to any conference or to pretty much anywhere in a strength and conditioning related deal and not run into this little Springfield army that's running around everybody that you want to tackle.
Well, like I said, I was very fortunate to kind of come into what I did. The program had already been established, and I just did some things to get it recognized by the NSCA as an applied program versus most of the other program out there are research. Last time I checked, and this may have changed recently, but we were the only applied in the country and one of 2 in the world. So, you have to go through an application process and, show that your curriculum is based on, your students being in the weight room, working with athletes, and learning to apply those skills. So I think that's one thing that is very unique to Springfield College. The students come on campus, they do an internship with me in the weight room, then they go off and they do two pretty big internships off campus as well.
This is part of the master's program.
Part of the master's program, yeah. And then we also have, at the undergrad level, we have a specialization in sports performance, where they'll actually meet with me and I'll kind of help them with their internship selection as well.
So now, is it housed in the kinesiology department? Is it housed in exercise science, or is it its own?
Well, we're within exercise science and sports studies.
Okay. So what's preventing other schools from following a similar model?
I think we're unique in that what I'm allowed to do with the teams and really the support I get. Everything's so intertwined between athletics and academics that I'm willing to. They let me be in the weight room. I don't have to. We're not a research-based school. We do research. We do quite a bit of research, but it's not that publish or perish type mentality where you get a lot of people with their PhD. They've got to be out there bringing in grants and doing research. My role is actually what they call a teacher coach. So I'm 50% athletics, 50% academics. So I've got I'm an academic faculty, but then I'm also paid by athletics.
So when you, I'm sure Margaret probably might be a better person to ask, but when you were starting the program and you were trying to get initial backing, for a lot of purposes, it's the cardiac rehab or corporate wellness or things along those lines are kind of dominating the exercise science, and how are you able to show a need, a demand for sports performance, obviously, and then again, it's something that I feel like it's not catching on right now. But you have how many students in your master's program every year?
Right. We currently have 28,
and a waiting list, probably even more. So I mean, they're filling what a normal grad program would accept every year, and there's a waiting list, and it's not being, like I said, it's not being replicated a lot. In my opinion, I'm curious.
Well, I think part of it is just kind of the unique situation we have, where you can have someone teaching classes and being in the weight room. And I think that's a disconnect sometimes you see with other programs, where you have someone teaching a strength and conditioning class, doesn't necessarily coach a whole lot.
Right.
So I think that's one thing we're very fortunate of. And I got there a couple years after the program started. And I know when Margaret started it, she went around to the coaches and really started the grad program and really the strength and conditioning on the side of athletics all at once, and really got that rolling with support of the coaches. And then it started off just a couple students here and there, and then really just started rolling now that we have, like you said, the Springfield Army going out around the conferences and really just promoting the program. And that's one of the great things. I'm lucky. I don't have a degree from Springfield College, but just that alumni network is amazing. And everybody wants a Springfield. If they graduate from Springfield, they want a Springfield intern, and they want to promote the program. And really interesting is when I took over everything, a lot of alums that I got to know over the years, I considered friends, they pulled me aside at the coaches conference. This was several years back, and they're like, all right, what are you going to do? We want to make sure you don't mess things up. So really, they hold me accountable. So when I talked to the coaches, when I was just actually in Beijing and at a training summit, and Mike Boyle was also speaking. So we have kind of the Springfield College connection there, and he's very involved in what are you doing with the program and that type of thing. So I've got all these alums really holding me to this standard that I've got to keep the program going at.
Well, it's definitely the model, in my opinion. I mean, I think what you guys do fantastic, and we obviously have 2 staff members on our staff that are from there, but I've hired assistants that have got Springfield grad degrees as well, and so it's definitely a model for others to follow. Let's take the kind of the academic hat off and let's put the strength coach hat on. Now it's the Division III program. I'm sure that the facilities are great, but there's always wants and needs and things along those lines. What can you take? What advice can you offer other schools that are in a similar boat? Maybe smaller weight rooms than they would like, more teams than they would like, less resources than they would like. what are some of the things that you feel like make your program unique that could be transferred or others could use in their own programs?
Well, one thing we did, and we were in our third weight room since I started. My first year that we moved into from a very small, actually used to be an old pool weight room, they put us underneath one of the residence halls, and it was just about 4,000 square foot weight room, but which was great for the Division III level. But one of the things that we just continue to get the support of the coaches, and I think we're very lucky with that teacher-coach model. Whereas I've been there 16 years now, and a lot of our coaches have been there a lot longer than I have. So I think that was the big thing. We got the support of the coaches. Then with the support of the coaches, then you get the support of the dean. And then for our new weight room, we have a 7,500 square foot weight room we built 6 years ago, and that was really the coaches working with the dean and then the president of the university. And we're so intertwined between athletics and the academic side of it. We were always known as a physical education school, and now exercise science and strength and conditioning has really kind of made its mark as well. So just tying everything together between athletics and academics was really the way we were able to bring the program along and get the facilities we have, and continue to get a budget to replace things that break and that type of thing.
Right. Well, there's no doubt that unfortunately in most places it's almost an adversarial type of relationship where it's us and them, academics and athletics, but by bridging the gap, you're able to accomplish so much more, and it's such an important piece. You mentioned the coaches. How are you able to get the coaches to buy into a kid, not a kid, but a young strength coach that's just getting his feet wet. All of a sudden now they're in charge of my team, and then every 2 years I'm getting a new one. How obviously I would imagine your answer will be that it's the Springfield program, and the Springfield program is just being implemented by multiple people. But how do you convey that information from one graduate assistant to the next, to the next, to the next?
Well, I think the one thing that I'm big on is just the interpersonal relationships with the coaches. I'm not big on email or calling the coach. I want to show up at their office and talk to them. And I think with that, just establishing that connection with every coach, they now trust me, and they know that I'm going to have we've got a standard operating procedure, certain things that I'm going to expect out of the grad assistants. And actually, they get new coaches every year. Wow. Because what I've started doing, and it's worked pretty well over the last few years, is students come in and they work with me a year, learning the system, and then they're promoted to grad assistants that second year. And the college is very nice to give me some positions and then some hourly, and so I can really divide up the teams among the coaches, so we don't have anyone with more than 4 teams, which is also takes the strain off them academically.
How many sports do you have?
We've got 22 sports.
Wow, well, that's impressive. You mentioned in there. When you were at Illinois, you had the upper body training, and that's kind of a passion and kind of an area of focus for you. What do you see people doing wrong? When you're visiting programs and you see them training the upper body, what are some of the issues that you're seeing people doing that maybe you would disagree with?
Well, I don't, not that much anymore. I think we've really seen the importance of it's almost gone from, it was like rehab exercises to prehab. Now it's just part of the program. Mm-hmm. And some people call it correctives or whatever you may call it, but I think just that shoulder health and the postural muscle and that type of thing, I think we've really, as a field, just really gotten into that, and we're more concerned with mobility and really how the body how everything's connected. So it's not just your bench, squat, and deadlift anymore. It's the overall health of the athlete. So I think that has changed a lot. We're starting to look, more muscle balance and that type of thing.
Yeah. You mentioned you travel. You're traveling the world now. I mean, I know you've traveled other places besides just China. But I know for me, when I went outside of the country for the first time, it changed my entire focus, my entire perception of the world. And our borders are shrinking terribly with Skype and all the different technology that we have. How are you able? What is, by going outside and seeing strength and conditioning in other parts of the world, how's that changed your opinion and maybe some of the things that you're doing with your teams?
Well, I think one thing, and I think I heard you mention this before, is Australian Institute of Sport. Mm-hmm. Back in grad school, I was fortunate enough to go to Australia and really see some of the science coming out of there, and just looking at that type of that side of it, integrating more into that. One thing I've really noticed over the last few years of traveling to China regularly is the flexibility, and I've done some functional movement screen on Chinese athletes, and they just knock it out of the park.
Yeah.
And they do so much stretching, so much flexibility work, and I feel like sometimes we've forgotten about that stretching. And I know that's, if I had to pick a downfall of my programming, it would be not taking time at the end to do that stretching, to really work on that. I mean, I work on the mobility exercises and everything, as part of your warm-up. Some of the things I'm looking to integrate a little bit more is a little more breathing, a little more stretching in the warm-up before we go into the mobility and the dynamic flex and all that. And then also trying to emphasize it at the end, and really trying to emphasize that with the coaches, and just talking to the athletes and the coaches in China, they do so much stretching and all kinds of soft tissue work before they train, and I think that's something we can definitely learn from what they're doing.
And when you say stretching at the end, are you talking PNF? Are you talking partner? Are you talking static?
I mean, just a mix of whatever's going to work. We've tried active isolated, we've tried PNF, we've tried static, just whatever's going to work for your situation. I know we went with active isolated. We were having trouble with some of the guys really taking it seriously, and really focusing on that contraction. And I think you're going to run into that with the PNF. So I think my philosophy's gone a little bit more than the static stretching that they're kind of used to, at the end.
Right.
So really, depending on the situation, or the size of the group and the number of coaches you have, whatever is going to work best.
Yeah. With being both rooted in the academics and the practical side of things, where do you see the field headed? I mean, it's a very young profession comparatively. We've made tremendous strides in a short amount of time, but still kind of a lot to be determined. What are some of the trends that you see that are going to be really in focus? What's a strength and conditioning staff look like 15 years from now?
Well, I think. That's a great question. I think one of the things I mentioned to your staff before we went on camera is what I've seen how the internship programs have changed. Mm-hmm. We've gone from places taking interns to places with internship programs. Mm-hmm. It used to be you did all the grunt work, you'd show up, you'd set up, you'd maybe coach, you were just kind of there to do the dirty work. And now you're getting to coach a lot more, getting to have a lot more of a curriculum at these places. And I think that is the biggest thing. So just year-round, that constant learning. Mm-hmm. And I find the students that come into the program at Springfield, they've really challenged me I've got to read constantly and try to keep up with them. But I think just the thirst for knowledge that these young coaches have, and I think I don't know if we're maybe see some more specialization where within a staff we'll have someone more specialized in speed, someone more specialized in the strength component and in the nutrition and so on. I think we're already starting to see that.
Right.
But I also think they're starting to understand that really for a coach to put the effort in with the teams, you can't have 9 or 10 teams.
Right.
And hopefully that's something that's going to change.
Right.
And I remember when I first got into athletic training, 25 years ago, the big thing was get an athletic trainer in every high school. I think that should be the goal for strength and conditioning.
We get saying that 100 times.
Oh, that'd be amazing. I'm still, kind of amazed at some of the kids that come in that just, some of their movement, quality of movement, or come out of high school. And I think it was just some, we got some great high school strength coaches out there, and I think we just keep adding to that pool. I think that's going to make a huge difference down there.
Well, yeah, I've been saying the two areas that I think we need to improve upon as a profession is, or at least to try to grow as a profession, is trying to put a strength coach in every high school. How many jobs is that? We're got people constantly fighting for jobs, and it's a good training ground in a lot of respects, or a good landing spot for people that want to stay put. The second thing is that assistant athletic director or associate athletic director in charge of sports performance, and really having to start to coordinate some of those performance disciplines, and that gives us a place to grow to as a strength coach as well, And so when you're getting let go because the coach doesn't like you anymore, you have a place to go, or something along those lines, And that it kind of brings up another point, that and I just spoke at, or I was on a roundtable discussion at the CSCCA conference about, where do we want to be housed? Do we want to be housed in athletic training? Do we want to be housed in coaching? Do we want to be housed, and I know it's kind of an internal debate, or at least a debate amongst our peers right now. But it kind of, I always kind of relate us to artists. It's kind of, because it's hard to define how we should be evaluated. So that being said, how do you think a strength coach should be evaluated, and kind of where do you think we should fall on that?
Yeah, that's a great question. I've had this discussion with some of our alums about changing. Do we change the sports performance, or are we kind of, as strength and conditioning, are we kind of, I guess, not limiting ourselves, but limiting the way people view us is what we do. We do a lot more than just, strength and conditioning. As far as where we're housed, I think one of the problems with the field is just you get great quality coaches losing jobs, and just that connection, with athletics or with football or whatever it may be. And I don't know. I see a lot of places are starting to go into sports medicine with maybe strength and conditioning and athletic training all together to try to protect the coaches and just the integrity. I don't know what the answer would be there. I mean, I think we need some type of regulation in the field, a little bit more so. So you have to have a certain level of training to be a strength and conditioning coach or a sports performance coach. I think that's one of the weaknesses of the field right now.
Well, I made the contention at the conference that, and again, I don't know how much of this I believe. I believe a lot of it, I think. But I like being in coaching. I'm a coach. That's what I do. I'm a teacher, just like you said earlier. And I like what that's been able to do for us in terms of we got strength coaches making $300,000, $400,000 a year now, So, when I'm on a staff, I don't see myself a whole lot different than the running backs coach or the tight ends coach or things along those lines. I see myself as I'm a coach. My discipline, my philosophy is strength and conditioning. And whether or not the coach likes my philosophy, the art, they like that or not is the subjective part. But they give up some of that stability for the potential earnings, which I think is huge. And I think there's more influence in that arena. I have more influence over the head football coach, the athletic director, than I do if I'm, maybe third or fourth in command in the sports medicine model. And I'm not one of those guys. And I've made this very clear on the show. I love athletic trainers. I love what they do. They're the most caring people in the world. That's why they do what they do. But the two disciplines are different.
Oh yeah.
And that's where I think out of that, I think we fall more like coaches. So I think it's something that we, as a profession, we need to continue to do, and I think that as students and young strength coaches, and it's our responsibility to help define that, and that's what's going to catapult us wherever we go next. But I agree with you. I think there is going to be a lot of specialization and having a kind of a team of people that you're going to have to work with, that kind of that high performance model that some of the Olympic sport countries are using and things along those lines. I think you're right on point with that. I know, you read a lot, obviously, for what you do and things along those lines. We kind of always end the show with some resources. So, do you got a quote that you live by, or one that's plastered up in your way?
Well, I think I have on the bottom of our staff manual: "Don't whine, don't complain, don't make excuses," which is I got out of John Wooden's book.
But these guys do that?
Yeah, but I think it's a quote by his father, Joshua Wooden.
Yeah.
So that's one I try to get these guys. Don't come to me with problems. Come to me with a solution. If you got a problem,
absolutely.
Okay, what do we need to do to take care of it?
How many times? What do we say? What are our two things? Pink elephant on the 50-yard line, right? And what do we do in what?
1969.
What do we do?
Put a man on the road.
Put a man on the road. So, if we can do those things, we can get it done, right? What about, let's go with a strength and conditioning book recommendation, maybe a book outside of strength and conditioning.
There's so many, great books. I've got the reading list for our advanced strength and conditioning classes. They have to read several different books, either on strength and conditioning, leadership, coaching.
So your favorites?
My favorite, I think I mean, I think the leadership one that I really implement a lot, we talk about in classes, would be talent code.
Yeah.
I don't know if that talent code strength, I don't know where that falls really, because I think it's across different, coaching and strength and conditioning. And then leadership, I really like Switch by the Heath brothers, and that's something we really implement and talk about in class. And I try to think if I read a book and I take one thing and apply it, I think that's successful.
Right.
As far as I like reading books, by coaches as well, by sport coaches. John Wooden. Just getting the insight and seeing that part of it. And I think all the things we can apply from this. Bobby Bowden was another one. I remember reading something in here, and he talked about, in his book, he talked about, every athlete is someone's son or daughter. And I think that goes into my philosophy a little bit on how I treat the athletes.
Yeah.
So I think all those books. I mean, as far as the one book, I try to get all of our undergrads that are interested in the field to read. Advances in functional training, understand the balance programming, and that type of thing, and kind of start with there. And go on to. I mean, there's so many other great books. I mean, Super Training one that I expect all my grads to read. So that there's just so many great resources out there, and I really think everybody should be reading at least an hour a day, or listening to a podcast an hour a day, between classes or driving to work or whatever. Just take advantage of every opportunity to learn.
Well, that's the key in strength and conditioning is you got to, you can't take any more time away from your day.
Yeah.
So so you have to find ways to fit it in. Yeah. So whether that's you're reading while you're doing cardio, or you're listening to a podcast on the way into work, or whatever, that's the challenge. So that's what makes it tough, but you got to make it happen. Just like with your athletes. Give us a when you're surfing the web, maybe a website that you go to.
I don't think there's really any one website I go to. I do basically whatever these guys recommend me. I've got so many 28 students that are always out there, and I kind of let them go through. They'll recommend different sites. So I don't really have a go-to website. I think there's so much. There's a lot of really good stuff out there. I think one of the things we try to teach the students is how to kind of take the science and the research and everything together with what you read, and that type of thing, and look at the source it's coming from and everything.
What about from a technology standpoint? Any technology you're using now, or an app maybe that you recommend?
Well, honestly, the app that's coming most useful would be like Skype or Facebook, or FaceTime, not Facebook, but Skype or FaceTime for classes. Start bringing coaches in, and really I sit them up on a stool on my iPad, and basically just do something like this almost every week in the advanced strength and conditioning class. But then the video, I think that's something that coaches now with the iPhones, the iPads, and all the devices, just the Coach My Video and the different apps like that you can do so many really good things with.
Well, that's great, man. Well, I appreciate we sprung this on you.
No problem.
So I appreciate you spending the time, man. But more importantly, I mean, your guys putting out 28 strength coaches every year, and what that's doing for our profession is fantastic. Thanks a lot for coming on, man.
Well, thank you.
Thanks a lot.
That's it for this episode of Iron Game Chalk Talk. Thanks to this week's guest, as well as our sponsors, EliteForm.com and IgnitionAPG.com, for bringing this episode to you for free. Make sure to check out RonMcKeefery.com, where you can join our mailing list, find the show notes, including all the links and resources mentioned, and information about Coach McKeefery's other products. While you are there, please join Coach McKeefery in the comments section thanking our guest for sharing. If you haven't subscribed to Iron Game Chalk Talk on YouTube or iTunes yet, make sure to do so. Comments, ratings, and reviews are always welcome. Coach McKeefery can be found on Twitter at @RMcKeefery, on Facebook and YouTube at /Ron.McKeefery. That's it for this week. Be sure to check back next week for another great episode of Iron Game Chalk Talk.